We are now gathered here for our regularly scheduled council meeting for February 24th. We begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are holding this meeting on the traditional territories of the Coast and Strait Salish peoples, specifically the Lekwungen speaking people known today as the Esquimalt and the Songhees First Nations, and that their connection to these lands continue to this day. I also want to point out that this meeting, like all meetings, is live streamed and then later archived for future viewing on the municipal website. We have a couple of things. If anybody's read through our agenda before this meeting, I want to just point out we have an amended agenda. There's new correspondence items on here, but also a new agenda item dealing with some new item number 5, which relates to some purchases for engineering public works. That amendment happens automatically. However, I'd also like to just get a motion to amend the agenda to move item number, I guess it's item number 9 now, on the agenda, which is related to the Heritage Conservation Area bylaw,
I'll make that
Move
motion.
amendment.
up in the agenda to number 2. Moved and seconded. Thank you. Is there any other discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed? Not opposed. So we'll get to that right after the minutes and adoption of minutes. We have a set of 5 minutes in total here. I'm happy to deal with those as a block, or if anybody wishes to make any changes.
Move adoption of the minutes of February 6th, February 10th, special council meeting, February 10th, council meeting, February 10th, special committee of the whole, and February 13th, special
Second.
committee of the whole.
Moved and seconded. Any changes, corrections, additions? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, none opposed. Thank you very much. And so item number 9 now, which is the bylaw number 4620.003. This has had first and second reading, which allowed it to go to public hearing. We've now completed the public hearing earlier this evening and is now in front of us for consideration. Are there any questions or clarifications or comments from Council, Councillor Patterson?
No, I just am happy to move third reading and adoption when we are ready to, unless there's any
Second.
discussion.
No, you can move it. That's fine, but it won't stop the discussion or questions
Okay,
from
I will
happening.
move third reading and adoption of the bylaw 4620.003, Oak Bay Official Community Plan Amendment, bylaw 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any questions, clarifications? I have one of staff. Third reading and adoption. I believe we can do them simultaneously, so. But we won't get to consideration of the motion for a moment here. I do have one. Do you have a question? Councillor Zelka, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to ask a question with the motion live on the floor. I wanted to ask 2 quick questions that came out of the earlier discussions and public hearing. Related to something I heard, something about a blasting and how an archaeological report had to be officially filed. Is that a question I can ask at this time?
No, it's not related to the bylaw, so.
All right, thank you. So I'll ask that question at the appropriate time. Thank you. The second question I had to do the question that was raised about energy retrofits, or the upgrading of houses to modern energy standards, or more modern energy standards. I wanted to ask through you to staff: does this bylaw restrict changes to the insides of houses with respect to adding insulation? Does it change replacing windows with respect to triple glazed windows or anything like that? Or I just wanted to have a sense for the restrictions or not with respect to energy retrofits of these houses under the HCA, please.
That would be a question for Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, through your worship. No, it wouldn't exclude or restrict energy retrofits. Obviously, if you're doing work that affects the exterior appearance of the building, that'll need to be done in the context of a character defining element, for example, for the home. But other than that, you can proceed with energy retrofits in heritage buildings.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate the clarification.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'm just going to stick with questions at the moment if we can't. Councillor Green? No? Okay, we're good. Just another question that just was arisen from the public hearing and really from correspondence in the public hearing. That was just a question of adding or removing properties to the schedule. Mr. Anderson, could you explain the process? There is a current list that's on there. How that came to be, just as quick sort of synopsis of why those properties are on that list, and also just what is the process for this body to make changes either now or in the future to that list.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The schedule that you see before you as part of this bylaw originated with the working group and the process associated with preparing the guidelines and the statement of significance back when that process was underway. This schedule at the time had included properties that were designated, heritage designated properties, properties that were on the Community Heritage Register, and also there were properties that were recognized through a 1986 inventory that the Provincial Heritage Branch had. Those were the original properties that were submitted to Council, I believe it was in January, respecting the working group. Subsequent to that, there have been requests provided to the district by property owners within the area to be included on the schedule. And so through review with our heritage consultant and staff, and also for some elements or properties, the Heritage Commission also was able to have a look at some of those additional requests. Those properties were also included on the schedule as part of that request. That staff had also done a circulation to property owners regarding the schedule, and then as part of this process, Council should know that staff also sent a notice to those property owners whose properties were to be included on the schedule, so that they were notified and informed of the intent of Council through this bylaw amendment to add those to the schedule. I think the second part of that was the process related. So the schedule does form, as I noted, part of the OCP amendment bylaw, and so any changes to a bylaw in subsequent to consideration of this bylaw being adopted, any changes would go through the similar process where there would be first and second reading, and then public hearing, and then consideration of third and adoption bylaw readings to any amendments associated with that. So that's the process subsequent to having an HCA in place if you were to add properties to this schedule.
Okay, thank you. And prior to its adoption, i.e. tonight, if there was any changes, they would just be done by a motion at this table to make the amendments here, is that correct?
Yes, it would be, process would be to consider an amended second reading to make any changes to the schedule, and then proceed with third and reading and adoption.
Okay, thank you. I think it's just important to understand the process. Okay, back to this table. I have no more questions, so I'm happy to entertain. We have a motion on the table. Happy to entertain comments, or I'll call a question. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few comments. First of all, I was chair of the Heritage Commission when this first came forward, this proposal, and I remember how excited we were at the time, so it's nice to see it reach this stage. I just want to say that I would like to thank the community, staff, the Heritage Commission and Foundation, the HCA Working Group, many residents who sent letters of support, and all of you for your patience and perseverance. And I brought this quote with me tonight, not because I'd already made up my mind, Mayor, but I have kept it in my briefcase, just in case. And it's Margaret Mead, and she said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." Thanks.
It sounds like you're speaking in favor of the motion.
I'm not telling you till the end.
Fair enough. Any other comments? Nope. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just would also like to express my appreciation and gratitude to certainly the work done by the task force on getting us to this stage, and the district staff, and to the Heritage Commission, all the members who have worked so diligently to work putting these materials together. But I also just wanted to express my appreciation for the homeowners that reside in this area. As Mr. Grant alluded to, conservation and protection of these heritage homes truly is a labor of love. And it can sometimes be a daunting task. So I just wanted to appreciate my admiration and appreciation for the members of the community who have undertaken it upon themselves to protect and conserve the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, I'll just say one brief statement, which I think is, having watched this process unfold, I think it's what I see in this proposal is that it's a balance. It's a balance of a reasonable amount of protection and a reasonable allowance of freedom for change, a reasonable recognition that change has to happen. And I think that's a balance we try and strike. Whether we got it right, I guess we'll see in the coming years. But I think that the fulsome input that's gone into this has helped to ensure that that is the case. With that, I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. We have a bylaw. We don't usually like lots of clapping, but we'll take it at this time. I understand how that's the necessary in this case. If people wish to wait a minute, I before everybody funnels out of here on that one item, I do have the next item on the agenda is mayor's remarks, and I thought I would, independent of what the result was, I did want in my notes want to just thank, as Councillor Green did, the residents of the within the HCA. There are many volunteers who contributed to that proposal, including the working group. There's also voluntary members of the Heritage Commission, the Advisory Design Panel, Advisory Planning Commission, and the consultants, Heritage Works, and the staff, our Oak Bay planning staff. So it just, also because he's not here anymore, but was intimately involved, just recognizing the work of the former Deputy Director of Corporate Services, Warren Jones, because he stepped in as the staff liaison. Director of Corporate Services, Warren Jones. 'Cause he stepped in as staff liaison when we had a time where we didn't have a full complement in the building and planning department, and he helped ensure that it continued forward during that time. So I just wanted to make that recognition for the work that's gone into it. My other comments this evening are fairly short. I just want to thank Oak Bay Police for helping with coordination and hosting of the annual Polar Plunge. They do a fundraiser for the Special Olympics. It was cold, and they raised over $40,000 for Special Olympics in that one event. So that was protective services, sheriffs, police officers, and others from across Vancouver Island participated in that. So good work for all the protective services for doing that. Also very happy to announce that we made the announcement today that we officially have the provincial grant for the next phase of the deer management program. So we'll have another $42,000 from the province to go towards this year's, which will be a continuation of the research, but also another application of immunocontraception to all the does available. We had a volunteer fair on Saturday, so I just want to thank Oak Bay Volunteer Services, Community Association of Oak Bay, and the Monterey Center for organizing that. It was a great way of getting people connected who want to volunteer to people who are looking for volunteers. I also had the pleasure of attending the annual Coldest Night of the Year walk held at our place. Just a good reminder for us of the ongoing issue of homelessness, and I got coerced into being the leader of the 2-kilometer walk segment, so we got handed a map and had to find my way and try not to lose a bunch of people in the process. And last but not least, on February 28th, we close our police board application process. So Oak Bay Council appoints one member of the Oak Bay Police Board. The rest are appointed by the province. The person who's serving, the appointee, is hitting the end of their term, and so we're looking for another person. So just putting it out there, anybody who's interested in potentially serving on the Oak Bay Police Board, please have your applications in to us by February 28th. And that concludes my remarks. But welcome to leave at this point if they wish. Our next thing on the agenda is the public participation period, and people are welcome. Anybody who wishes to, I'll let people leave at this point, and then we'll get to the public participation period. I believe we have settled down enough that we can get going on the public participation period. So we are just, this is for those in the audience interested, this is a thing we have at our council meetings that allows members of the public to address council on topics that directly impact the District of Oak Bay. We have at least one, so I'll just state for the record for all of those in attendance, if you can just state your name, municipality of residence, and the topic of your remark, and write your name on the speaker sheet. We have a 3-minute limit on this thing, but a total of 20 minutes for all speakers. So welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mayor. My name is Stephen Bowker, and I live beside Quimper Playground. I have to apologize to council staff and to the public at home that I did not have my latest submission regarding the housing needs report finished in time to submit it electronically, so all I can offer is printed copies. My submission is in 3 sections: my recommendation to council, a brief statement of context which supports those recommendations, and deeper background information, which in this case includes a web link to the very first HNR to be published in the province by the District of Sooke, and a simple table which compares our HNR to Sooke's. The table begins on the first page and fills the second page. The first few rows show that we received a $30,000 grant to do our HNR, whereas because Sooke is a smaller population, they received only $20,000. It also shows that the body of our HNR is 44 pages long, while the body of Sooke's is 86 pages long. So for 50% more grant, Oak Bay is getting 50% less report. Before anybody dismisses Sooke as an unimportant comparison, let me remind them that Sooke is also a part of the CRD and shares many housing issues with Oak Bay. Within 10 years, its population will exceed Oak Bay's. Most important of all, however, is that Sooke's mayor, Maya Tate, was unanimously elected as the president of the Union of BC Municipalities, and before that she served as first vice president of the UBCM. As the communication link between local government and the provincial government, the UBCM worked closely with the province to plan the policies and legislation of the HNR, because it will eventually lead to every local government having a housing strategy embedded in their OCP. The province relies on the UBCM because through her members, the UBCM can tap the brightest and most experienced minds in local government. It's likely that our Director of Finance, Mr. Payne, has been consulted in this way before. Also, the UBCM administers the provincial grants available for creating HNRs. The UBCM is committed to encouraging consistency and quality across all local governments, and one of their methods is to keep an online library of templates and best-of-breed examples. When the HNR was a new program, they had templates, but urgently needed a good example. It is an obvious assumption that Maya Tate Sooke was asked to create such an example and publish it as soon as possible.
It's not quite, I still have another 12 seconds here for you if you wish to finish up.
Since you have until August to receive this HNR, you'd be ill-advised to rush to publish it without reviewing Sooke's example and in a different presentation layout to Sooke's example. So now all I wish to do is read my recommendations to council.
I'm afraid that's time.
Can I come back later and read them?
We have our procedures bylaw is very straightforward. We actually don't have flexibility at this table to extend the 3 minutes. Are the recommendations in this document?
The recommendations are in that document at the top.
Okay, so we have that, and we can read that in
because
consideration of.
because I didn't get an electronic copy in, the public at home don't know what the recommendations are.
Fair enough, Mr. Bucker. Tell you what, I will read them aloud when we get to the topic on hand.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward and address council?
Oh,
Welcome.
Hi. Thank you. My name's Nancy Barnes, and I just wanted to speak very briefly about the tree protection bylaw. I'm just really pleased to see that we have a more robust bylaw coming forward. Don't know if it's perfect, but I'm not, can't say, but I'm just really appreciative that we're having something that's more comprehensive, and I'm hoping will perhaps increase awareness in the municipality of how important trees are. And I just want to really thank Oak Bay Parks and Chris Hidley for all the work they do, because it's just great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Anyone else wish to come forward to speak? Welcome.
Hello. Good evening. I'm Ron Carter. I'm on Falkland Road in Oak Bay here. I've spoken before about my support for the upcoming new tree bylaw, which I hope will be adopted tonight. I would also like to congratulate Mr. Hidley and all of everyone else's efforts in producing, I think, a document that's very well aligned with the urban forest strategy. I've said it before, perhaps not in this room, but I certainly just think of the bylaw as one of the many tools used in preserving the urban forest. And I'm particularly concerned with and heartened that I believe you'll be reviewing other bylaws that hopefully will be harmonizing with the tree preservation bylaw and in the future. The other tools that that are employed in preserving and enhancing the urban forest is the significant trees. We only have 9, one that's dead, and I'm hoping that there will be an opportunity to accelerate the number of trees that will be on that schedule for the tree bylaw. When I came into a big audience here, I forgot it was for the other. I thought we'd have a cheering section for the adoption of the bylaw, but I'm hoping it goes through. It's a working document. I believe it's really successful on interpretation, proper interpretation, and obviously when there's appeals, I've been heartened by the last number of appeals that have been rejected in terms of allowing the removal of perfectly healthy bylaw protected trees, and I'm particularly happy with the increase in the urban forest canopy that will be protected by lowering the size of the trunk size. I'll stop there, but I'm here to support the adoption of the bylaw, and then I hope that's the way it happens. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Did you just write your name down as well?
Oh, it's all down.
Perfect, thank you. Would anybody else like to come forward at this time? And I'm just going to turn to Ms. Hopkins to make sure I'm not wrong. I believe our procedures bylaw does have people speaking once. Is that correct? For 3 minutes each? Not having it in front of her, obviously. I think I just put her on the spot. Ms. Hopkins?
Your worship, I don't think that's specified.
That we can't. I know it's 20 minutes in total. It's okay. I'll read aloud the pieces that are on here to make sure that we have it. And that's been my recollection of the way that we've implemented it at this table. So, and seeing anybody else wish to come forward to address us at this time? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 4, which is the housing needs report. And as I stated, we got handed a document from Mr. Bowker during the public participation period, asking and he wanted to speak to. So I'll just read aloud the recommendations that he put in his document. That he respectfully requests that council postpone the receiving of the housing needs report until the public, councillor, staff, and the project team have a chance to compare it to SOOC's already published housing needs report, or that council direct the project team to convert the housing needs report from its complex 2-column public relations, quote, public relations, unquote, layout to a standard document layout as used by SOOC, so that the future updates can be more easily made by district staff without special tools or training, or that on behalf of Oak Bay Taxpayers Council directs the district's auditor to launch a quote value for money unquote audit of the Housing Needs Report project using Sook's Housing Needs Report project as a baseline copy of that. So we have this item on the agenda. I'm going to go to staff at this time now that that's done and to provide an overview. Is there Ms. Jensen or Mr. Anderson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think first I'll just do a little bit of an intro as far as the Housing Needs Report is concerned. So you may recall that at the February 10th Committee of the Whole meeting, the committee did pass a recommendation that Council receive the 2020 Housing Needs Report in accordance with Section 585 of the Local Government Act. The committee also requested some last revisions be made to the report. Those were to do with the percentages of owners and renters in core housing need. Those were laid out in the key findings section of the report. The numbers that were provided in the report provided a percentage to total households for that category. Those percentages have now been revised to reflect percentages based on total owners or total renters, so it's just a little bit easier to read. Some language has also been added to describe the rounding of percentages, in other words, where they don't necessarily add to 100%. So this is due to Statistics Canada and confidentiality issues. So they tend to round to a multiple of 5 or 10. So that's why you'll see that in some of those statistics, they don't actually add up to a 100 exact. So those are the changes that were made as a result of discussion from Committee of the Whole. Then tonight it is in front of you for that formal receipt.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jensen. Are there any questions of staff? We have a recommended motion here. We can have usually generally take questions ahead of that, but debate would come after a motion. So if someone wishes to make a motion. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Salka.
Thank you very much, Chair. A question through you to staff. The Housing Needs Report has a legislated required form in a particularly legislatively required format that is to be submitted after our receiving of this document. Is that form filled in, included as part of this submission so that we can review what it looks like, please?
Ms. Jensen?
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. That form is included in the Housing Needs Report. You will find it immediately after the executive summary and the key findings section.
If you could point out the page, I would very much appreciate it, please.
Sorry, it doesn't exactly have a page number. If you
It's
go
page
to
9 of the report.
immediately before the table of contents.
Thank you.
So I'm going to make a motion that Council receive the 2020 Housing Needs Report in accordance with Section 585 of the LGA.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All right, so the motion is live on the table. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Mayor. And this arises from discussion at the last meetings. As I am now reviewing some of the reports that are put forward by other communities in comparison with this document, at a prior meeting when we reviewed the report, I believe it was Councillor Appleton that put forward the comment that this is not, in fact, a policy document. It is a report, and I do have some concerns, certainly in the way that on page 33, 4.6, a summary was written where it says that the projections show that between 2016 and 2019 how Oak Bay should have grown. But it says that Oak Bay is falling far short of addressing regional growth pressures. But the housing report is really to look focused at Oak Bay and its unique challenges that it faces. And so while I'm fine with receiving the report, I think that this does not address all of the pieces that would be necessary, and certainly that other municipalities are gathering to really guide them in making decisions on housing going forward. So I just want to confirm that this is in fact not a policy document which is going to be the basis for all of our decisions going forward, and that there will be opportunities to gather more information that council may make a decision on that they would like to have in order to guide the decisions. Thank you.
I'll put that to Mr. Anderson.
Through your worship, the basic answer is yes, but I'll just confirm it. It's an information document, and so it's not a formal policy of council. It is received as information that represents what's in the report, and that's council, by receiving that, would be using that information going forward. But I think it's important to note that as we move into looking at housing options in Oak Bay and we start to work toward this housing framework that we've spoken to, that the housing needs report provides information toward that, but we also have a process, and we would go through a full review of all those housing options and their implications in order to come to, if you will, policy and regulation conclusions respecting what Oak Bay considers appropriate for housing options in this community. So.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Any other? Councillor Zelka?
Thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate the clarification that this is not a policy document. I appreciate also the comments mentioned by the authors of the document. They underscored it's no policy direction, no trade-offs, it's not characterized as a housing framework, and those sorts of things. It is and to be received for information. So with that in mind, and also with careful, close reading of the Local Government Act with respect to the creation of a housing need report, I appreciated Councillor Patterson pointing out section 4.6, the summary on page 33, because I do have a problem with the first paragraph, in that the first paragraph makes a number of opinion statements with respect to regional growth pressures about Oak Bay, but not about Oak Bay in particular, but about the area around Oak Bay, and that raised a concern for me. And let me point out that, if I may. In the actual Section 585 of the Local Government Act, it is very clear that the data to be collected for a housing needs report is to be based on the information collected under Section 585.21. And this is related to the comments that were received in the correspondence related to this item, and I'm aligning with some of those comments. So if I look carefully at Section 585.21 of the legislation in terms of where we're supposed to get the data that encompasses this report, 581.21 basically says the local government must collect information in relation to the demand for and supply of housing for the applicable area of the local government. Applicable area is specifically defined as the area of the municipality. It has nothing to do with regional government. It has nothing to do with neighboring brother or sister municipalities. It has nothing to do with any potential future amalgamations. It has only to do with the area of the municipality. And as a result of that, I take exception to the way 4.6 summary, first paragraph, is expressed. It refers to Oak Bay having a shortfall with respect to regional pressures. It refers to Oak Bay as falling far short of, and making a number of opinion statements. So I would, with that in mind, I would like to move, assuming I can at this time, I would like to move that this paragraph be struck from the report. And if that was the case, then I would be certainly be willing to receive this report as is with that paragraph struck, please.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor, okay, move seconded by Councillor Patterson. So just we're all clear, first paragraph of section 4.6.
And if let me know when I may speak to it.
You may speak to it.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair, if I could help to motivate. So this is relating to page 33 of the Housing Needs Report. It's the first paragraph in section 4.6. It's called Summary. I've had no problems with the second paragraph, but I am referring specifically to the first paragraph that makes a number of to my mind, with respect to the actual legislation that talks about the area of our municipality, with that in mind, I would refer to these as inflammatory statements with respect to regional growth pressures, with respect to a number of opinions being expressed that I feel are outside of the mandate of the Housing Needs Report. It seems self-evident to me, but I do look forward to hearing comments from my council colleagues about this. For those who read the correspondence that accompanies this, I think both of the submissions make reference in particular to this summary section. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Councillor Patterson, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mayor. I do support the statements that Councillor Zelka has just put forward. And again, this comes out of consideration for, there are other housing needs reports coming in by other municipalities, and I am certainly seeing how they are addressing their reports specific to their area. There are references to a regional strategy, but they're bringing them back to their specific area, and some of those reports are being adjusted, sometimes between a lower amount and a higher amount, but they are honing in specifically on their residential area, and so I also do have problems with this summary because it talks about the region instead, the regional area instead of Oak Bay district specific.
Thank you. Just so this is the summary section of the housing in section 4, which is housing projections. So it's not a summary of the entire document. It's the summary of the housing projections section. Mr. Anderson, did you have any comment?
If I may, and Ms. Jensen may also wish to speak to, I guess, the provincial requirements respecting putting local municipalities into a regional context. But I wonder if I mean, there's information in that summary that is based on the projections and the scenario that's used in the report. The first sentence, I believe, is the sentence that might be offensive to some, and I'm just wondering if there's some value in keeping the factual summary information that relates to Oak Bay specific, but perhaps considering modification or removal of the first sentence if that's something that causes concern. So that's just a suggestion from my perspective based on what I've heard.
Ms. Jensen, there is some comment here as well about where the inclusion of only local versus the inclusion in terms of the region. Maybe you could address that as well.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. There are regulations. There are regulations set out as well for the Housing Needs Report, and that lists out quite a comprehensive set of data that we have to collect as part of that Housing Needs Report. And absolutely, the bulk of that content is aimed towards at the local context. But it does actually speak to other regional policies as well, specifically to the regional context or the regional growth strategy. What are the housing policies within that strategy? How is it also speaking to housing issues within the area? And the summary form itself also speaks to collecting some data that's both regional and provincial. So it really is a mix. Absolutely the primary content being local, but it does refer to other as well.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the table to amend to remove the entirety of the first paragraph. Councillor Zelka?
Thank you, Chair. I take staff's point, and I would be fine if this paragraph was reduced to the facts, and the opinion was teased out of it. I would be perfectly fine with it. But that means dropping words like "is falling far short of," "should have grown," "a shortfall of." Those sorts of words, as long as they were teased out, I'd be perfectly fine with the facts as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? Councillor Green?
Well, I'm struggling with the removal of this information. It's not a report that our staff prepared. It was prepared by a consultant. We paid that consultant to produce the report. Frankly, based on recent information that I've had nationally, Victoria has just become among the top 5 cities in Canada for the highest rental rates, but the greatest gap between rents and wages. So we are not doing well, and I guess I feel that we don't want to gild the lily on housing issues in Oak Bay. We do have housing issues. I've heard it many times. We have a lack of reasonable housing options. We don't have any affordable housing, quote unquote, and we do need more rental housing. So I guess I'm not as aggrieved by that first paragraph or the first sentence as others might be, and I respect that others have different opinions, but I'm struggling with taking this out. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Green. Any other discussion? Councillor Ney?
Well, the way I've understood, I haven't got the LGA in front of me, so I don't know, but I'm going to take staff understand this. So what I've understood is that it's not wrong to consider the status of Oak Bay housing needs in the context of the region. In fact, that is what has been asked of us. That is part of the criteria of doing this exercise, is to consider not only what's going on here, but to consider it within the context of our regional plan. And so I would actually, I'm considering the off-the-cuff recommendation by staff to take out the first sentence, but if you did that, it wouldn't make sense where these numbers and comparisons are actually coming from, I think. But maybe I'll let staff respond to that. I was thinking even in the first sentence, you could take out the word regional, but again, it doesn't make sense where the comparison of numbers would be coming from as I read it. So with that having been said, I take Councillor Green's point, is that I don't think we should downplay what's going on here in this community in relation to the region and how we are part of a region. This is our housing needs show up in the context of a region that has a shortfall in and of itself, and it's very amplified in this community in the context of the region. So I at this point, unless I hear something else from other councillors, I'm satisfied with the way it reads currently.
Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm also not in favor of the proposed amendment. I'm fine with section 4.6 the way that it reads. The report notes that the CRD projection as it currently stands for Oak Bay's population growth actually can project into a negative population growth. The consultants were then in a situation where to properly capture Oak Bay's housing needs in a regional context, and we are a part of a region, until Oak Bay has a land base which is diversified in such a way that we're completely independent from our adjacent municipalities, we have to be considered in a regional context. So this plan, in fact, if it did not use the projection or a projection of the type that was utilized in this report that attempts to capture the regional context for growth, it would be deficient if it was planned based on a negative or negative population growth. So it, by its very nature, needs to plan for what Oak Bay would need as part of the regional context, which we cannot divorce ourselves from. So I don't have any issues with the language here because it captures where Oak Bay's needs are in a regional context.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Any other new speakers? Councillor Green?
Just very quickly, I'm also reminded that we are signatories to the Regional Growth Strategy, and we have been signatories to that strategy since 2005, I believe. So that, that concerns me that we aren't prepared to acknowledge our regional place in the housing framework. So that's just a point. Whether it's persuasive or not, that's up to the rest of council.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you so much, Chair. I'll continue to speak at least in favor of the motion unless we decide to make a change. If we were discussing the regional context statement, I would totally agree with all of my councillor colleagues. But we're not discussing the regional context statement. We've already dealt with that. We've already approved it, and that's gone forward with respect to the work we're doing with the CRD. This has to do with an Oak Bay housing needs report with respect to Oak Bay. As long as we're not mixing that apple with this orange, I'm fine to sort of separate this idea from that idea. Yes, at a regional perspective, in another report, in another context, we do need to discuss some aspects of possible changes to Oak Bay in the regional context or at the regional context with respect to Oak Bay. That's not what this report is about. And the legislation, I thought, was fairly clear. It's respect to the area of the municipality. So that's why I would be proposing that we remove the opinion aspects from this sentence, from this paragraph at the very least, if not remove the entire paragraph. Thank you.
The motion on the floor right now is to remove the entire paragraph. Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Mayor. And just to speak to this further, and I certainly appreciate the comments of other members of the council about the regional growth strategy. And perhaps if this had been shifted around, I might have a different perspective of it. If you know, it had started off a little bit more as it does in the second, where it says, as noted at the beginning of this section, growth projections are based on a number of assumptions and present one possible future. And in other reports that I have read, they state that clearly, and then they will show alternatives to what they have determined for their own district in comparison still to the regional targets, but based on more defined, in-depth look at what is actually happening, both historically and based on pressures from external parts of the region that they cannot totally influence, but that influence them in their district. And so this is where I'm now having the difficulty of reading this one, because it's conveying in the reading of it that this has been determined to be accurate information. And I think I would like to see it more stressed that this is only one possible future. And it doesn't determine conclusively what is right for Oak Bay.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I'll just, no other hands, I'll speak. Councillor Nate, go ahead.
Through you, Chair, could I just ask staff to respond to that last comment? I'd just be curious about staff comment, please.
Unless there's a question, I'm not sure there's something they can comment on. I don't think there's a...
Yeah, fair enough.
I'll just throw my 2 cents into this. I think I actually understand the concerns about the way it's worded. I do note in the section 4, which is fairly long, a number of pages long, it starts off explaining the nature of the growth scenarios, and it has 2. It has a status quo and it has a growth scenario, and it talks to both of those, and that's simultaneously reflected back in that summary in the second paragraph. But not in the first paragraph. So I hear the concern about that the first paragraph reads as if those are just the only scenario. I'm somewhat mollified by the wording in the second paragraph of the summary, only 2 paragraphs, that does articulate that fact that there's only one possible future and has other pieces in here. So I'm not sure it's worth throwing out the entirety of the paragraph. I agree with probably on the staff suggestion of taking out the first paragraph might be the far short. I think is sort of a indictment type statement. First sentence. I'm not sure I could support the entirety of that paragraph, but I certainly understand why the concern, because you read that first before you get to the second paragraph, which mollifies those pieces in particular. So I will. If there's any other discussion, or I'll call the question on the amendment. Councillor Zelka.
I'm willing to. As long as the seconder is willing to agree, I'm willing to change the amendment to be simply dropping the first sentence, but to leave the rest.
Councillor Patterson, are you amenable to that?
I will second that, yeah.
Okay. So the mover and the seconder have amended their amendment to now reflect just the removal of the first sentence of that paragraph. Is there any further, so it's similar, but little less. Is there any other discussion on that portion? Not seeing any, so I'll call the question on the amendment, which is to remove the first sentence of section 4.6 summary. All those in favor? Opposed? 2 opposed, Councillor Appleton, Councillor Nay. So that modification is now made just to remove that first sentence. Is there any other discussion on the motion to receive? Councillor Zelka.
Thank you. I'll just share a comment. I actually understand what Steve Barker was suggesting. I did have a chance to read the SOOC's Housing Needs Report, and I must admit I am having Housing Needs Report envy. It's a lovely report and a really nice template, and I'm looking forward to maybe our next Housing Needs Report possibly using that as a basis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on the receipt? Seeing none, Councillor Green.
Thank you. Just briefly, what I'm glad about, though, is that this housing needs report, with its warts, obviously people feel it has warts, this is beyond anecdotal, and a lot of the housing issues in Oak Bay, in my experience, have been based on anecdote as opposed to fact. And I think the data here is very useful and very informative, and certainly I've learned something from it. So I appreciate the importance of this report and the fact that it is something to which we can now refer, and data, it produces some data that we can use to inform our own housing plan. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Seeing no other comments, I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Zelka opposed. Okay, we have the next item on the agenda then is traffic control orders, and I'm going to just do these one by one. So if there's any, oh, sorry, they did. My apologies. Nothing, there's a new amended agenda that I printed, but I think I didn't bring my own notes to the table here, so so be it. Give me a second here just to bring back up my my notes or the pieces. Oh, so there's an item number 5. This is Public Works 2020 Annual Tender Awards. So we have a report from the Superintendent of Public Works, and there's a number of tenders there that we can deal with together, or we can deal with them individually if people prefer. And we have the Manager of Public Works here. We'd like to give a quick overview of the... Sure, why don't you do that? We're getting used to having you at this table now.
Yeah, through your worship. So the district issued an invitation to tender out for 20 days in January for backhoe rentals, tandem truck rental, gravel supply, and ready mix concrete. These goods and services are used by our Public Works Department and Parks Departments in daily operations and capital projects. The recommendations are based on low bid as well as quality of product. And the recommendations are for the tenders to be awarded to for backhoe rental and tandem truck rental to Northridge Excavating, and gravel supply to Lehigh Materials, and ready mix concrete to Trio Ready Mix.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Councillor Zelka?
Thank you. Through you to staff. I just wanted to ask, with respect to capital projects, which ones is this? Are you imagining that these will be applied to?
Mr. Brozak?
Pretty much all of them, because of the gravel supply. So that would be the base materials after we dig out the sewer mains or water mains or storm mains, backfilling the trench with appropriate materials. Capital jobs as well. Sometimes we'll use extra backhoes and extra trucks as well. So for most of the capital works, we use most of these different areas. Concrete when we're putting the curbs back or sidewalks back as well.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson? I had Councillor Braithwaite, you had a...
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question for staff here. This isn't, if I'm looking at the financial impacts of these, I don't know what's been taken into consideration for our 2020 budget, but this is a difference of about $80,000, give or take, on expected costs. So I'm just wondering if that will mean a change in our budgets, or if in fact this has already been taken into consideration in compiling our budgets.
Mr. Brozick?
Yeah, this is actually already in our budget. It's works which are part of the, so that, first of all, that approximately 80,000 that you're talking about includes the additional probable work that we're going to be doing in the capital. A lot of the funding for in the financial impact comes not only from capital, but the operations, leaf pickup, things like that, and servicing fees.
Councillor Braithwaite?
I'd like to move option 1 from the staff report, please.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments? I have a quick question of just my own edification. These consist of a number of different materials with a number of different prices, some higher, some lower. Is it just you work out the estimated amounts of each of those and the total aggregate sum and the quality of the materials and come up with a ranked scorecard? Is that how that's dealt with, or is it dealt with on a sub-selection of those materials?
For the gravel supply tender, there was only one bidder. There's really one person or one company within the operating area here, which supplies the road base, crushed drain rock, 19 millimeter road base sand, and also allowing dumping. But when it came to the ready mix concrete, the two players involved, one guaranteed its quality of mix over 3 cubic yards, so there was a quality factor in the selection of the ready mix concrete.
Okay, thank you very much. Seeing no other questions, I will call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Unopposed. Let the work begin. Item number 6, traffic control orders. And I'll just have these, we can just read them individually so there's clarity for people watching as to which ones we're moving forward.
Okay, so I move that council approve traffic control order number 2020-03 for the installation of stop signs and stop bars on Smythe Street at the intersections with Victoria Avenue and Hampshire Road.
Seconded. Any discussions, questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Unopposed?
And I move that council approve traffic control order number 2020-04 for the installation of stop signs and stop bars on Deal Street and the intersections with Margate Avenue and Orchard Avenue.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Unopposed?
And I move that council approve traffic order number 2020-05 for the installation of stop signs and stop bars on Tinto Street at the intersections with Oliver Street and Monterey Street.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion, changes? Yes, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to staff with respect to this motion on Tinto. I understand Tinto has a number of, I think I call it dragon's teeth. What do you say? Used to be there. I haven't been by there in the last little while. It's just to when I lived down there, this would have been maybe a year ago, it was to stop parking on the grassy parts. Just wondering whether this would have any effect on that.
We're talking about rocks placed on boulevards in front of private residences.
Dragon teeth, I think, yes.
Through the chair, that was my first question to ask what dragon's teeth were. But just to confirm, we're referring to obstructions placed on the boulevard on Tinto to discourage parking in certain areas. And the question was, sorry, just want to
I apologize. Yes, so the dragon's teeth has to do with those rocks that are designed to scratch the heck out of your car if you happen to park on the grass along Tinto, in particular on the school side. Just wondering whether this traffic order will have any impact on the use of those rocks there that I believe were placed on request of the local neighbors.
So through the chair, the thing that is in common with those two issues is the street. They're independent of each other.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the table. Any other discussion, questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Unopposed?
I move that council approve traffic order number 2020-11 for the installation of stop signs and stop bars at Pentland Road at the intersections with Victoria Avenue, Falkland Road, and Hampshire Road.
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion, questions? Seeing all those in favor? Opposed and opposed. I know it's hard to time those hands just right. Again?
I move that council approve traffic order number 2020-12 for the posting of signs limiting parking for 2 hours, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Goodwin Street.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed?
I move that council approve traffic order control order number 2020-13 for the designation of 2 handicapped parking stalls at the east end of the entrance to the Windsor Pavilion to indicate that parking in the area so marked is for handicapped cars only.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Not opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite and Councillor Zelka, for expediently getting us through that. Item number 7 on the agenda is the Heritage Commission minutes for receipt.
I'll move receipt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Item number 8 on the agenda, new business and verbal reports. Is there any new business? Notices, motions, things of that nature? Nope. Okay. Report from the Capital Regional District. Just very quickly, as you probably heard, the province required the CRD to allow for the application of biosolids at Heartland or other places as part of their beneficial use of biosolids. CRD board did approve that, certainly for the short term until longer term uses is allowed. So that if it goes, it has been approved. So as expected, probably 5 or 6 weeks a year that application will happen at Heartland. The other is of interest, probably the Kings Road. Over here, there was a large portion of 4 hectares or so of land that was owned by BC Hydro, which Saanich is looking to turn into a park and is seeking assistance from the CRD. Acquisition of that land or partial acquisition does not comply with the CRD's park acquisition policy, so there was direction given at the last meeting for 2 things. One, to go back and just review that policy for land acquisition, and just not specific to that piece of property, but just in general. It's been a number of years. The continuation of the land acquisition fund was approved after, I think it was 20 years it was in place and very successful, but it hasn't had a review of the policy, so that's going to be undertaken. And there's some possibility of finding some other creative solutions, so staff have also been directed to work with Saanich on some creative solutions within the current guidelines for the possibility of supporting that as a natural park. So there's nothing to report in terms of results, but that's where it's sitting at. Councillor Green.
Just a question on, this is so loud. Just a question on the biosolids issue. Can you tell me, was that unanimous at the CRD table?
It was not. There was a number. I couldn't tell you who voted against it, but I believe of the 24, I think there was 7 or 8 that voted against it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, that's my report for the CRD, though. Are there any other verbal reports, just from other committees and commissions we go around? I'll start with Councillor Nay and work our way around.
Yeah, so as council liaison to the Royal McPherson Theatre Society, I just wanted to report out on an update around a feasibility study that was announced on February 19th at a meeting. And the society has been struggling with increased demands on the facility and trying to figure out what might be some solutions to addressing those demands. And recently, a private local philanthropic foundation offered some money to conduct a feasibility study that the society intends to use to determine if the theater could accommodate some kind of expansion or improve the infrastructure that could better serve the community needs. So I just wanted to report out that a study will be underway. It'll take about 6 months, and there'll be 3 phases to it. First, there'll be a needs assessment and they'll talk with the various stakeholders. Of course, Oak Bay would be one of them, and other user stakeholders to determine things like whether a rehearsal space, offices, additional event space would be desirable based on the community needs. So there's no ask here. This is just for your information, and there'll be a report back in about 6 months.
Thank you, Councillor Nay. And I believe one of the things you're looking at is how to squeeze more women's bathrooms into that facility. Councillor Patterson, did you have anything to update?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As council liaison to the CREST board, well, I attended both. I'm on the CREST audit committee, which I attended the week before last, and then last week I attended the CREST board meeting. And at the board meeting, the board approved the terms of reference for an upcoming strategic planning session we have slated for March 18th, and that's to establish a new 5-year plan for the emergency communication system that CREST provides for its members. So that will be underway in March, and then hopefully we will get the report out on that by the end of June. I also attended the as liaison to the Victoria Family Court and Youth Services. Because of delays in January meetings for the snow, we had both our AGM and the board meeting this previous week, and the board approved the annual report, which will be going forward, and it'll be published on the website. And a few of the advocacy initiatives that we did achieve in 2019 were Guns and Gangs seminars for local resource agencies, Indigenous perspective training, and communications with federal and provincial government representatives on core funding for youth justice committees and its affiliated agencies, which presently many of them rely solely on charitable donations and grants. And we also did launch a new website, Twitter and Facebook pages that now we have on those pages listing of all of the groups, support groups in the community, the contact names and the emergency numbers for people. So it's kind of one place to go to and be able to understand what resources are available for members in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Zelka, anything to?
Thank you, Chair. Just a report out from the Water Commission. There was a couple of technical updates to the cross-connection control bylaw. If anyone's interested in these fascinating changes, feel free to give me a call. Only suitable for an engineer, I believe. There was, however, some mining access requests were also approved as we continue to try to lock down or restrict access to the leach water area. They're still mining gold placer tenures still being held there, so we still have to go through a management process on that one. There was some revisions to the unidirectional water distribution main flushing program that I'm sure our Director of Engineering will be fascinated to hear about. I did raise the point with them, since they want to do flushing outside of the winter months and possibly move into the water restricted times, with respect to make it easier for them to schedule their resources. Of course, there was some discussion around that about, well, how are we going to explain to the public that you have to restrict water, but at the same time we're going to flush all this water and clean the pipes. So the staff will come back and we'll figure that one out. But I did point out to staff the fact that Oak Bay is going to, over the next 20 years, start the process of our sewage and stormwater piping separation, and so those particular pipes that they'll be dumping water into, we'll be slowly trying to pull apart. So I did remind them that they will need to speak with our staff before they dump extra water in there at times that may not be considered in the past, but will now be considered in the future. And the last thing was just the Water Watch report. Things are looking good.
Thank you. Councillor Appleton, anything to update?
Very briefly, Your Worship, just with respect to the Greater Victoria Library Board, we were in receipt of an excellent presentation by the board. Mentioned therein was the beginning of a brand new strategic planning process for the library board. So I will be involved in that. Now appointed as the vice chair of the Planning and Policy Committee of the Library Board. So that process just kicked off, within the last week or so, and we'll be doing a lot of work this upcoming week to set up the terms of reference. The intent is for that strategic plan to be back out to for review by the end of the year. They have an ambitious timeline to get it done over the course of the late summer and into the fall, and we'll be back sort of in front of the member municipalities in the October-November timeframe.
Thank you very much, Councillor Appleton, and congratulations. Our condolences, one of those two. Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Councillor Patterson and I completed our second day of interviews today for the Mayor's Task Force for Parks, Rec and Culture. And so now we'll take the info away, and with the help of staff, we'll compile a report of sorts. And I'd like to thank Ms. Denome and Ms. Hopkins for taking minutes for us at those 2 days of interviews. And just a reminder that Thursday is the Yes Awards, and I know that every member of council has said they're going to be there, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much, and we will see you on Thursday.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Councillor Green.
Just very quickly, I attended part of the volunteer fair that was on at Monterey Centre this weekend on Saturday, and I saw other council members there, Councillor Patterson. And I saw you briefly, but I didn't get a chance to speak to you. But it's always rewarding to go to those and to see how many really great organizations are in the community doing really good work.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Item number 9 on the agenda was dealt with earlier. That was the Heritage Conservation Area bylaw. So number 10, we have the tree protection bylaw.
I'd like to move 3 readings. Can I do them all together?
You may do, let's do first and second reading
Okay.
first, and then
Sure.
we can have a discussion.
I'll move first reading of bylaw number 4742, Tree Protection Bylaw 2019.
Second.
Move and second. This is the first reading only. All those in favor? Oppose, then move second reading, and we can have
Move
debate.
second reading of bylaw number 4742, Tree Protection Bylaw 2019.
2020.
Second.
Sorry, I have my notes then wrong. It does say 2020 on the. Oh. Oh. Should this read as 2020 or 2019? I believe it should read as 2020 if we're doing the readings now.
Your
2020.
Worship, this should read as 2020.
Yeah.
I will rephrase. I move. Do I have to do first reading again now? No. Okay. I will move second reading of bylaw number 4742, tree protection and bylaw 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded. So it's open for questions or discussions or debate or Councillor Zelka.
Thank you. At the Committee of the Whole, Special Committee of the Whole, there was a suggestion that Section 10.4 be amended. I just wanted to ask whether those changes were incorporated into the wording of this bylaw, and how staff dealt with the amendment to the amendment to keep it from being too complicated.
Mr. Hidley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Zelka, yes, the Section 10 was amended. It was split into 2 sections. Specifically, Section 10.4 deals with canopy cover targets required for specific residential zonings. So it would now read, previously, or the section read that canopy cover targets for these specific zonings, residential required canopy cover targets where an owner applies for a permit for the construction of a principal building, an addition to a principal building, renovation, or now alteration of exterior building. So that has been taken out, and it now reads just construction of a principal building or an addition to an existing principal building.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Thank you, Councillor Green.
Thank you, and I just want to, through you, thank Mr. Hidley and all the members of the public that were involved in putting this together, how much work it was and how important it is to the future of our tree canopy in Oak Bay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed? And
I'll move third reading of bylaw 4742, tree protection bylaw 2020.
moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed? I'm guessing that the adoption portion of this will come back to the next regularly scheduled council meeting in March. Fantastic. With that, I need a very important motion to adjourn.
Move adjournment.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much.